Hi, my name is Dion Tyler, and the topic I chose was school counselors' role in suicide prevention. School counselors have to wear several different hats. First and foremost, in my opinion, their main responsibility is to make sure that students are on track to graduate. So I think they should take a proactive role in making sure students have the support and resources they need to go in that direction. This should be the case in all grades. I know many will argue some of the earlier ages is not important, but I think if you start the mentality of children going in that direction, it's the best way. But some may not think so at some of the earlier grades. But one of the hats that counselors have to wear is a supportive role in the case of a crisis. Students undergo stress from family issues, social issues, school issues. They have mental health issues and other various factors. And sometimes those factors include suicide. One of the reasons why I even considered, thinking back of going in this route, I can remember at a young age, a friend of mine considered committing suicide. She was a really close friend. She confided in me that she wanted to commit suicide. And now that I am pursuing becoming a school counselor, I can see this as possibly being a very sensitive topic, a sensitive issue in a school. And I would like to know more on how to handle a situation like this. So I chose this subject. I did most of my research on EBSCOhost, and I found several articles. And one of the articles was a qualitative article, and it was written and reviewed by several different doctors. And it focused on some of the myths. Some of the myths were only rich people committed suicide. Don't talk about suicide. It gives ideas to your kids. As far as ethnic issues, mostly white people committed suicide. Gender issues. Some of the actual facts were that women attempted suicide 4 times higher than males did, but males actually were more lethal in their attempts. And then it also went over different methods and who was a potential for suicide risk. It also touched on some of the legal issues associated with providing counseling. Usually school counselors play a huge role in preventing a crisis, and ethically they should. However, if they have not been properly trained and certified, the school and the district can face legal issues. The school should consult outside agencies and school counselors should there be not a qualified counselor who is licensed or has some type of certificate. Otherwise, they should play a supportive role. The article concluded that school counselors and admin should consult outside agencies if they don't have a licensed counselor on staff. School counselors should provide follow-up supportive counseling, follow-up and supportive counseling once the youth returns to school. Counselors should respond in a safe, well-informed ways because the community depends on the school to be a positive, functional institution and expects them to have the ability to function in complex situations. The second article was a qualitative article. This article did a review on a school district in Milwaukee. In 1993, 2 brothers committed suicide because they didn't like school and they didn't want to go back. And I believe the ages of these 2 boys were 6 and 9. And then 1 week later, in the nearby community, 2 boys ages 14 and 16 shot themselves because both of their families were dissatisfied with their grades. So the community immediately responded, and the article goes into detail of the process of bringing a comprehensive plan of post-intervention care. Unfortunately, it was after they were reacting to the fact, but they agreed in the article that the best prevention is the best post-vention is prevention, and the Association of Suicidology developed guidelines regarding post-vention. So some of the guidelines that included as the principal in a situation like this would be the chairperson, and they would be directing the crisis. So they would be responsible for putting together the crisis team, and which consisted of school counselors, possible mental health workers. If they didn't have qualified mental health workers inside the district, they would go outside and consult other outside agencies. The team would contact the family and the siblings to provide support. They would identify the victim's best friend for supportive counseling, and then the staff would provide factual info at the first class when all the kids were back to school. Someone from the crisis team would actually attend the deceased kid's schedule who passed. And normally it was the school psychologist. The school counselor probably would have a better relationship and know more of the kids, but for the sake of identifying specific behaviors, body language, verbal and nonverbal cues, the school psychologist would be the preference to be able to catch some of these, some of these cues. The issue with this article is that it didn't go further to show the results of what the post-vention program did for the school district. So this was a school district-wide mandate that they decided to do, which I thought was a great idea. The article agreed that post-vention and prevention for suicide should be a drill, just like we would do prevention of a fire drill or earthquake drill. They agreed that this is something that should be in school and bring awareness. The next article was a quantitative article review that examined the effect of early intervention programs designed to respond to students in college who demonstrated the risk of suicide. There were, in this review, there were about 108 participants who were referred to the early intervention program. And the results provided that the intervention, when applied early, was a vital needed service. Students were able to rebound and manage to keep a good GPA. Some of the limitations were in the research was the ability to identify what specific part of the program was most effective. Also, students who didn't actively engage weren't contacted, so they kind of lost track of some of the students that didn't stay engaged. So those are some of the limitations of this particular article. Another quantitative article, the review, covered a study conducted by some doctors from the Center of Disease and Control. And what it did was it measured the attempts of 15,000 suicide attempts over a 20-year period of time. It measured the attempts among students who had depressed moods, sexual identity issues, relationship issues. This is what they were covering. It showed that suicide was the third leading death among students the age of 18 and 24. I believe the first and second was accidental death, and then the second was, what was the second? I forget what the second one was, but suicide among students ages of 18 and 24 was third. The study found that many students, despite depressive symptoms, they didn't try to commit suicide, but students who committed suicide had a higher rate. But suicide among students who had high rate of suicide ideation that went untreated were those who had a higher percentage of committing suicide, and they were students who had attempted suicide multiple times. The challenge with this study was it didn't show whether the early attempts after the test was done, it didn't show whether the early attempts were considered warning signs of suicide, because 50% of all suicides that happen, they happen between the age of 25 and 49. So that was that's what I wrote my review on. The question that I have is how come there's not a comprehensive suicide program in schools. Suicide is not uncommon. It happens enough to whereas I think that it should be something that schools should be paying attention to and should bring awareness to not only staff but children, because I believe there's a lot of kids out there that have had these thoughts or even know someone who's committed suicide. So I think just like a fire drill or earthquake drill or a lockdown, I think there should be some type of practice or some type of awareness in schools on a more frequent basis. Suicide needs to come out of the dark. It needs to come into the light, and people should not be afraid to talk about suicide, the realness of it, and how it affects families. And children need to know that there's support in advance instead of waiting till someone commits suicide and then reacting to it. Once we're reacting to it, it's too late. It could be like a domino effect. So I just think that we need to do a better job of providing care for those who are attempting or are considering attempting suicide. So I hope that sheds some light to what my review was about. I really enjoyed this study, and if you guys have any questions, I look forward to you guys' posts. Thank you.